I'm a pharmacist in Stockholm, and last August, an American tourist approached my counter at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, looking genuinely distressed. She needed urgent medication, apparently. She'd been working from a cafe all morning and developed severe neck pain from her laptop setup. Standard enough. Then she asked what time we closed. 5 o'clock, I told her. She looked confused. But what about your evening shift hours? I explained we close at 5 and reopen Monday morning. This woman's face went through every stage of grief in 10 seconds. She started explaining that she'd read Sweden has the best work-life balance in the world. So obviously pharmacies would be open late for people finishing work at 7 or 8 p.m. When I gently pointed out that if we closed at 5, it meant most people also finished work around then. She accused me of lying about Swedish productivity statistics. She'd Googled them specifically for a work presentation. She then demanded to speak to whoever designed our inefficient system and tried to show me a Forbes article on her phone about Nordic work culture. I had to explain that good work-life balance means the pharmacist also goes home at 5. She left, muttering about how she'd have to take emergency sick leave from her remote job to pick up medication during business hours. Apparently not seeing the irony. By the way, this is the level of cultural analysis I track full-time, so you don't have to. Most channels give you anecdotes. I map the patterns behind them. If you're someone who values that difference, you'll want to subscribe now, so this kind of nuance doesn't disappear from your feed. I watched her return to the cafe across the street. Laptop already open, ice pack pressed to her neck. Typing furiously. My friend works at a Croatian national park, and an American hiker started arguing with him because the trail closed at sunset. Not because of safety, because it was. Discriminating against people with demanding careers who can only hike after work hours. She'd arrived at 7:30 p.m. expecting a full mountain experience. A hotel receptionist in Portugal told me about an American guest who filed a formal complaint because the pool closed at 8 p.m. His reasoning? Europeans are always bragging about work-life balance. So why isn't your leisure facility open until midnight for people who work late? He'd planned his entire vacation schedule around his East Coast business hours. Here's what happens when Americans try to export their work culture to countries that have actively fought against EIT work at AE's government registration office in Berlin, where Americans come to register their address mandatory within 2 weeks of moving to Germany. This particular American arrived for his appointment, the laptop bag over his shoulder, already on a phone call. He tried to continue the call during our meeting. When I asked him to hang up, he informed me he was executing a multi-time zone work strategy and couldn't just go offline. I explained that I needed his full attention for legal registration. He responded by trying to negotiate a working lunch-style appointment, where he could answer emails while I processed his paperwork. I'm a government official. We don't have working lunches. We have appointments that take exactly the allotted time. He then asked if he could optimize the process by filling out forms while on a conference call, headphones in. When I refused, he launched into a lecture about German efficiency. Claiming his research showed Germans value productivity above all else, he pulled up a bookmarked article about German engineering precision. I told him that efficiency means doing one thing properly, not 12 things poorly. He accused me of violating the spirit of German culture. Then he asked if our office had Wi-Fi so he could at least knock out a few quick emails in the waiting room afterward. I pointed to our sign, "Please give our staff your full attention. No phones during appointments." He photographed it and said he was sending it to his company's HR department as an example of European bureaucratic overreach interfering with worker flexibility. His registration took 6 minutes. I'm a tour guide in Galicia, Spain, and I had an American couple on a food tour who seemed confused that we stopped at a restaurant at 2 p.m. They asked when we'd continue the tour. I explained this was lunch, a 2-hour meal included in the tour. The husband looked panicked. He'd scheduled a working lunch with clients back in Texas at 3 p.m. Spanish time and assumed he'd be walking and eating simultaneously, taking the call while we toured. When I said the entire group would be sitting at a table for 2 hours, he asked if I could just give him his food to go so he could walk the route alone while on his call. I explained that Galician lunch culture is the tur, the sitting, the conversation, the courses arriving slowly. He tried to negotiate eating faster. What if we do a working version? Everyone eats and discusses business? I told him nobody here discusses business during lunch. That's the point. His wife started crying, saying they'd specifically chosen Spain for its work-life balance. And now they were being forced into unproductive leisure time. She'd brought her laptop specifically to catch up during tourist activities. They both left after the first course, taking their octopus and takeaway boxes. And I watched them sit on a bench outside, laptops balanced on their knees, eating a Michelin-recommended meal in 7 minutes between video calls. A colleague at a Norwegian telecommunications company told me about an American hire who was furious about the mandatory 5-week vacation policy. Not because he didn't want vacation, because he'd calculated that it would damage his career trajectory compared to American colleagues taking 2 weeks. He tried to negotiate taking only 2 weeks and getting paid extra for the remaining 3. When HR explained that wasn't how Norwegian labor law worked, he offered to work those 3 weeks remotely off the books so his American managers wouldn't know he was on vacation. He'd developed an elaborate system involving VPN locations and scheduled email sends to maintain the appearance of working from the office. HR had to explain that the mandatory vacation existed specifically to prevent this behavior. He responded by threatening to report them to the American Chamber of Commerce for forcing uncompetitive work restrictions on American citizens abroad. And this right here is the kind of thing most people miss. Not the story, but the system underneath it. I break these cultural mismatches down every week. The only people who actually see the full picture are the ones subscribed. If you want the insider tier of understanding, you know where to click. He lasted for months before returning to the States, citing the oppressive leisure requirements as his reason for leaving. I'm a neighbor in a Parisian apartment building, and an American moved in below me last spring. Within 1 week, I'd received 3 noise complaints from him about me. I work in publishing and keep normal hours. Home by 6:30 p.m., dinner by 8. Lights out by 11. His complaint was that I was stomping around during peak productivity hours. He'd attached a schedule showing his optimal work times, 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. When he could interface with East Coast business hours without distraction, he demanded I institute quiet movement hours during his evening work block. When I explained that 8 p.m. wasn't late at night, he showed me his company's productivity research indicating that serious professionals work evenings. He'd created a whole presentation about American work ethic and tried to schedule a building meeting to discuss implementing productivity-friendly noise policies. Our building manager pointed out that French labor law actually prohibited employees from responding to work communications. After hours, the famous right to disconnect. He claimed this law was clearly not being enforced because he saw lights on in apartments during evening hours, which he interpreted as people working. When the manager explained people were cooking, reading, or watching television, he seemed genuinely confused. What's the point of being home if you're not working? He tried to petition the building to designate certain units as professional floors for people with serious careers. He moved out after 6 months, leaving a 1-star review of Paris on Google, complaining about the forced work-life balance culture, preventing ambitious professionals from reaching their potential. I work at a gym in Copenhagen, and an American member approached me, furious because we don't have Wi-Fi. She'd specifically joined a gym near her apartment so she could multitask fitness and email management. When I explained our philosophy was to disconnect during exercise, she pulled up our marketing materials on her phone, pointing to phrases about holistic wellness and mental health benefits, argued that for Americans, mental health meant staying on top of work responsibilities, and preventing her from checking email was therefore damaging her wellness. She demanded we install Wi-Fi as a mental health accommodation. I suggested she could exercise for 45 minutes without her phone. She looked at me like I'd suggested swimming across the ocean. But what if something urgent happens? She asked. What if my team needs me? I pointed out that her team was in California, currently asleep given the 9-hour time difference. She'd set alarms for 3 a.m. Copenhagen time to attend morning meetings. She then argued that Danish work culture's famous productivity came from people working during all available moments, including gym time. When I said the opposite was true, it's productive because we actually rest, she accused me of spreading anti-American propaganda. She canceled her membership and left a review warning. Americans that Denmark doesn't support serious career. Professionals who need 24/7 connectivity. She'd been in Copenhagen for 3 weeks and had already attended 47 hours of video meetings outside her actual work hours, all scheduled to accommodate various U.S. time zones. A friend who teaches at a Portuguese university told me about an American exchange student who tried to negotiate attending classes via Zoom. Because she'd secured a remote internship with a New York company, the internship required her to be available 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. in Lisbon. She proposed attending morning classes in person and watching afternoon class recordings at midnight. When the professor explained that Portuguese university pedagogy involved discussion and participation, not recorded lectures, she argued that her internship was real-world experience more valuable than classroom attendance. She'd calculated that the internship's networking potential outweighed academic engagement. The professor pointed out she was paying for Portuguese education, not American work experience. She responded by attempting to organize other American students into a petition for globally competitive scheduling that would allow them to maintain U.S. career trajectories while abroad. She'd created an entire manifesto about how European education needed to adapt to the realities of global business culture. The petition got 2 signatures, both from her roommates. She eventually dropped 3 classes, failed to others, and spent her entire semester abroad, working 50-hour weeks for an unpaid internship, never leaving her apartment outside of mandatory academic requirements. Her Instagram showed 0 photos of Portugal, just screenshots of LinkedIn messages about maintaining hustle culture internationally. I'm a postal worker in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and last month, an American expat came to mail a package. Already mid-phone call, asking me to help while she talked to her team lead. I waited. She kept talking. After 3 minutes, I started helping the next customer. She hung up abruptly and demanded to know why I'd skipped her. I explained she hadn't been ready for service. She said she was multitasking, a critical workplace skill that apparently Slovenians didn't value. I told her that giving me her attention for 2 minutes to mail a package wasn't a productivity failure. It was basic courtesy. She launched into a speech about American efficiency and how Europeans hide behind work-life balance to excuse low productivity. She'd been in Slovenia for months and was convinced the entire country was less successful than America because people actually took their full lunch breaks. When I asked if she was happy here, she paused for the first time in our entire interaction. I don't understand the question, she said. I'm being productive. I processed her package, which took 90 seconds, and she immediately got back on her phone before even leaving the counter. She walked straight into the door because she wasn't looking up, apologized to the door, and continued her call outside. Through the window, I watched her stand in the middle of a beautiful medieval square, one of the most gorgeous views in Europe, staring at her phone screen, nodding along to whatever crisis demanded her immediate attention at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday? Maybe? The real productivity hack is actually experiencing the place you're in, the Australians. We're right to call it out, but honestly, half of Europe has been saying it for decades. Americans just keep showing up with their laptops, confused about why the rest of the world doesn't want to optimize their lunch breaks.